My name is Logan. I was born and raised in Hanover, New Hampshire, but now live with my family in Virginia. When I was 13, my dog Millie, a beautiful 60-pound German Shepherd, saved me from being lured out of my house by something. I use the word something because I never completely understood what was trying to get to me, but I have a gut feeling. If it weren't for Millie, I don't know what would have happened to me. When I was growing up, our house was on the south side of Greensboro Road, just outside of Hanover, and behind our house was nothing but hills and trees. About a week prior to my experience, my dad saw something that he wouldn't stop talking about and also ties into my story. It was at night and he was outside working because he always had a project going on, and he said he saw a small plane going in circles extremely low behind us like it was going to crash. Then he swore he watched it go down somewhere in the trees and not far from our house. I remember him being so serious and amped up about it, then taking off in his truck to go find it. I was young, so I don't remember every detail, but he came home later without finding anything. I know he made some phone calls that night too, but I don't know if it was to the police or our neighbors or what. For days after that happened, he kept bringing it up over and over again. We never did hear a report about a plane crash or got any other information, so who knows what it was that he saw. The following weekend was my parents' anniversary, and that Saturday night they went into town for dinner and were staying a single night in a hotel. I was supposed to be home with my older brother Colton, who was 16, but he ended up leaving for half the night without telling our parents. He made us pizza and watched TV with me for a while, then two of his friends picked him up to go to a girl's house. I didn't care and I would never rat him out, but it was a typical big brother thing to do while we were home alone. After he left, it was just Millie and me, and she was laying next to me on the couch in front of the TV. I was right on the edge of falling asleep when our power flickered off and on. It wasn't a full outage, but it was enough to make the TV shut off. I got up and turned the TV back on, then went to the kitchen to get something to drink. While I was leaning into the fridge, the power flickered again. Our kitchen window was on the back of the house and faced south toward the woods, and I remember standing up just in time to look out the window and see what I can only guess was the same thing my dad saw. It looked exactly like a small plane flying in a circle way too low, basically barely above the trees and dropping. I'm pretty sure I said, "How is this happening?" again out loud. I couldn't believe how close it was either, like crash into the house close. But by the time I walked out the back door, it was gone. No plane and no engine sound. It definitely woke me up and I couldn't wait to tell my dad that I had seen the same thing, but being a dumb teenager, I just went back to the couch. The second I sat down, I heard someone call my name as clear as a bell. It was quiet, and if the TV had been any louder, I probably wouldn't have heard it, but it was for sure coming from outside. It sounded like whoever it was standing on the back deck. Then I heard it a second time, and that one made Millie jump off the couch with her ears up. Then it happened again and she started barking. That confirmed that I wasn't just hearing things. Let me tell you, my first thought was not fear, and I didn't think a psycho killer was out there. I thought it was my brother and his friends trying to scare me. I turned on the back porch light and yelled some dumb insult at the door, then walked away to show them that it didn't faze me. When I went to the front of the house to see if his friend's car was there though, I got a little anxious because our driveway was fully visible from the front windows and it was empty. I even went outside and called Colton, but got nothing. I locked the front door and turned around, and Millie was in the kitchen intensely staring at the back door and doing this quiet, low growl. She wasn't barking, but looked hyper-focused on it. I went to grab her, and that's when I heard my name again. What hit me next is hard to explain. I felt a wave go over my whole body from my head down. The only word that seems to fit this feeling is urgency. I would liken it to how you might feel if part of your house was on fire and you just knew you had to get out of the back door. That's the urgency I was feeling. It was like I had to go out the back door, and I was convinced that whoever was calling my name was trying to help me. So I started walking toward the door, completely ready to open it and follow the voice. Millie stepped right in front of me, barking and growling at the door and being extremely aggressive. I had never seen her act like that, and we had had her since she was 4 months old. When I reached out with my hand actually on the door handle, she sat down on my feet with all of her weight. She was such a big, heavy dog that her doing that broke me away from whatever trance or mental state I was in. Instead of opening the door, I locked it and backed away. A real terrifying fear hit me then. I had no idea who or what was outside, and I couldn't believe I was about to open the door and walk out. It still gives me chills to think I almost went outside. Millie stayed at the door for a good 5 minutes doing that same low growl the entire time and would occasionally jump up to look through the glass. I had moved over to our fireplace and was holding the metal poker with both hands, not really knowing what to do. Eventually, she either calmed down on her own or sensed that there wasn't a threat anymore, and she jumped back up on the couch. I went and sat as close to her as I possibly could and waited, still holding the poker and hoping my brother would come home. About 45 stress-filled minutes later, that finally happened and Colton's friends dropped him off. As soon as he walked in, I asked if they were the ones messing with me. He swore up and down that they hadn't done anything. They had been at the girl's house the whole time, and I believed him because even he looked worried after I told him what happened. I don't remember getting much sleep that night, but I had never been so glad my brother was there with me. He has always been this tough, brave guy that I looked up to, and he still is. I really felt safe after he got home. Even as a kid, though, I had a gut feeling it wasn't a person outside. Of course, I can't say for sure what it was, but deep down it felt like it was something else trying to get to me. That feeling I got was so crazy. I've never felt anything like it. There is no reason I should have felt an overwhelming urge to walk outside after hearing someone call my name. That's a stupid thing to do and makes no sense. I should have had the opposite reaction. Then there's Millie, who was the friendliest dog ever, but she was ready to rip someone apart. I also have to take what I saw falling out of the sky into account. Both my dad and I saw the same thing on different nights with no explanation. That seems too weird to be a coincidence. I did tell him I had seen something like he did, but never said a word about the other stuff. Back then, I was worried they'd call the police and I'd have to talk to them about what happened. I don't know why, but that scared me too, so I kept my mouth shut. I firmly believe that if Millie hadn't been there and jumped in like a dang hero, I would have walked right out the back door into who knows what. I really feel like that amazing dog saved my life. Right off the bat, I'm going to say that most people won't believe my story. If I were hearing it from someone else, I'd think they were making something out of nothing, and that's fine, I understand. But this has been with me for as long as I can remember, and it's been a very powerful and constant part of my life. Since I was very little, like as far back as I can remember, I've had dreams about beings that are not human. I don't mean the stereotypical gray aliens with big black eyes. These are just another species that look a lot like us but taller and honestly much better looking. I usually joke about that part, but it's true. They look like an ideal version of a person. When I was young, these dreams were simple. I would play with these beings, learn with them in groups like school, and just exist in this strange place like it was totally normal. I didn't think about it back then. They were just dreams I would have. But as I got older, especially through my junior high and high school years, they became much more than that and started to mean a lot more to me. This wasn't happening every night or anything, but it was often enough that it felt like I was remembering things more than dreaming about them. As I got older, the dreams became far more detailed. They weren't vague and playful anymore. They were vivid experiences with actual information and adult emotions. There was one unique and recurring being that would be there off and on through my teen years. She wasn't my mom, but she felt like a mother figure. She had that same warm, protective, and loving energy. Every time I interacted with her, it felt like I belonged with her in some way, or that I had known her for a very long time. One particular dream I had in high school forever changed the way I think about these experiences. In this dream, I was in the other place. I don't know what to call it, and I had just lost my father. Not my real-life dad, but my father there. The feelings I had felt exactly like I had lost my real dad. It was gut-wrenching and horrible in every way. I also remember that this father had lived for hundreds of years and tragically died in some kind of accident, not of old age, and we were all gathered at a wake or celebration of life for him. I remember this place so clearly. It was in a stunning green valley surrounded by mountains that looked very similar to the villages and towns you see in Switzerland, or at least from what I've seen in pictures. I've never been there. There were places to live and work and eat, but it was like nothing we have on Earth. While it had that Swiss or Nordic feel, it looked extremely advanced. I'm talking tens of thousands of years ahead of us, but still fully and perfectly merged with nature. Everything was clean and efficient, and it just seemed to be glowing with life. There were unbelievable gardens blooming everywhere, and even waste seemed non-existent. At the wake, though, the sadness I felt was overwhelming, and when I woke up, that sadness didn't just fade like it would from a normal dream. I carried it around with me for months, like I had lost a real person in my life. Several years after high school, I was 23 and living in an apartment with my boyfriend in Springfield, Missouri. One random and normal weeknight, I went to bed and had what ended up being the most profound dream of them all. The second I fell asleep, I was back there. That same futuristic Swiss-like village. That time it was even more beautiful than it had been before, and it felt like I was stepping into spring at its absolute peak. I remember walking down a path lined with trees that reminded me of cherry blossoms, but on steroids. They were the most amazing, vibrant trees you could imagine. On the other side of those were houses built into the land itself, like the ground and the architecture were one thing. They all had the same look to them, but it was still unlike anything I've seen here, advanced and organic at the same time. I walked into one of these homes and there she was again, the same mother figure. She looked older but was still incredibly beautiful. For whatever reason, seeing her face pushed me into a brief period of lucid dreaming. I realized that I wasn't actually there and I was dreaming all of it. I asked her question after question out loud, like, why do I keep having these dreams? What is this place? And why has it been a part of my life for so long? She looked at me like it was the most obvious thing in the world and told me everything I was dreaming and experiencing was normal. This is where information flooded into my head. She told me that all of us are infinite energy and we choose to live these different lives in different places and at different times. She told me that I had lived a full life there already, with family and friends and countless life lessons, but that was a long time ago, and I had recently chosen to live the life I'm living right now here on Earth. She also brought up my father from that place, the one I had lost in a dream as a teenager. She said he really did die there, and that's why I felt it so strongly, but he was fine and continuing on his own journey. Then she assured me with complete confidence that I would see him again when I'm finished here. As if this couldn't have been more life-changing for me, she ended our conversation with one final piece of advice that I have never ever forgotten. She held my hands and told me that life is a classroom, not a courtroom. The second those words came out of her mouth, I woke up. It was hours before I needed to get up for work, and I remember sitting up in bed and just staring at the wall with that in my mind. It changed me and changed everything I believe. I was raised loosely Christian, and I was always taught that reincarnation or living other lives was silly or not a real thing, but this felt so real to me. I knew deep inside that something important had happened to me. I'm a lot older now and still occasionally have dreams of that place and those beings, but they are few and far between. It's much foggier and more distant than it used to be, and it feels like a signal that's fading away. I feel like whatever this is in my life started when I was young, then peaked in my early 20s and has been tapering off ever since. I'll repeat myself here. I don't expect many people to believe what I'm saying, and that's okay. I've been told it's an overactive imagination many times. I don't believe that. I really think there's something to the idea that we live other lives in other places, And I believe there are other beings living on all kinds of worlds in our universe right now, and some of them have a much better understanding of what we're all doing here. I guess the best way to put it is, even if I never fully understand what these dreams mean, they have shaped how I see life and death and everything in between, and that has been more than enough for me. I'm going to jump around in time a little to keep this at a reasonable length, but our family has been plagued with visitations and abductions. For some reason, it only affects the women in our family, but it's been going on for generations. I grew up on a farm in New South Wales, not far from the edge of the Pilliga Scrub. It was dry country with paddocks stretching out all over the place. At night, I remember it being so quiet that the only sound I'd hear was the occasional gust of wind rattling our old metal shed. We didn't have many neighbors nearby, and it was 10 minutes down a dirt road just to get to the highway. Back in those days, I had a bit of a phobia about bedtime. Even in the summer, when it was hot enough to stick to your sheets, I would sleep with the covers pulled tightly over my head because I hated looking at my window at night. There shouldn't have ever been any lights where we lived, especially around my window, but sometimes there were, and I would see them. They were faint but bright enough to make my thin curtains glow, and every time I saw them, I knew something was coming. I would see the light come in, then I would hear footsteps that sounded light like a child, and they would be moving down our hallway. There was always a smaller sound along with it too, almost like a little dog's nails tapping the timber floor. The footsteps would stop right outside my bedroom, then I would hear them walk in. I tried so hard to keep the covers completely around me and tucked underneath me, always making sure there were no gaps or holes, but every time I would feel the edge of my blanket being tugged, and then I'd remember nothing until morning. I don't know how many times this happened to me as a child, but it had to be at least 5, and I didn't know anything other than I didn't like it. I wasn't alone with whatever was going on at that house. I had heard my mom telling my dad that she had heard our front door open and close on more than one occasion. She said she had even called out thinking one of us kids was up and walking around, but that was never the case when she'd get up to check. I also heard her mention to my dad that she felt like there were pieces of time she couldn't account for. To further verify that something was going on out there, when my grandmother would visit us, she would sleep in my brother's room and my parents would make him bunk with me. She had 2 separate experiences in his room, and after the second one, she refused to sleep over anymore. She never told us what it was, she only said that something wasn't right at our house. When I was 10 years old, we moved up to Queensland, and for the first time that I could remember, I slept without the covers over my head. After that move, things were quiet and it almost felt like there was a major shift in our whole family. I stopped thinking about the farmhouse and nearly forgot about those things I had been so scared of. For years, my life moved forward. I finished school and started working, then got married and had a baby. It wasn't until my daughter was 5 that things started happening again. Out of nowhere, she began sleepwalking in the middle of the night. The first time it happened, I picked her up to walk her back to her room, and she was wide awake by the time we got to her bed. When I asked her if she was okay, she told me that a man came into her room on a moonbeam. Those were her exact words, and I'll never forget the way she said it. She didn't seem afraid of this man, she just told me what had happened. After that, our family had more quiet years, and nothing happened. I went through a divorce and ended up taking a nursing job at a smaller hospital and moving again. At that point in our lives, it was just my daughter and me, and she was 17. One night, my daughter came back from a camping trip with her girlfriends and was really shaken up. She said that on her last night, she lost track of a few hours and had no idea where she had gone or what had happened. When she woke up that morning in her tent, there was a very unusual sore spot on her leg with red marks and a pattern that she was worried about. Her friends told her that it was just mozzie bites, or mosquitoes for anyone outside of Australia. I checked them out and they were definitely not bites. Not only have I been a nurse for most of my working life, but I've lived in Australia my whole life. I know what mozzie bites look like, and these marks were completely different, not to mention they were all together in one small area. After that incident, my daughter kept growing up, eventually moved out and had kids of her own, making me the happiest grandmother ever. About the time my granddaughter was in a preschool program, I got a call very late at night from my daughter. I hate late night calls because they're never good, and this was no exception. I didn't even say hello when I picked up the phone. I just asked her what was wrong. My daughter went straight into telling me how my granddaughter had walked into their bedroom, woken them up, and told her that a man from the window had come into her room. This was the last straw for me, and it was right then that I realized our family was being targeted or watched, or whatever you want to call it. My granddaughter was now the 6th generation of us having the same crazy experiences, and for some reason it only seemed to be happening to the women in our family. I've kept mostly quiet about everything my entire life because people don't take this sort of thing seriously, not where we live anyway. I know it isn't just something I'm making up in my head because it keeps happening over and over again. Whoever or whatever is visiting us is just going down the line, and it doesn't look like there's an end to it. My daughter and I have talked at length about everything, and we've almost come to accept it. We don't know what it is or why they've singled us out, but we are both certain it seems to run in the family. I want to thank everyone for watching another episode of Skywatcher Stories. If you like hearing these personal experiences of strange sightings and alien encounters, please subscribe because I upload new episodes every week and it really helps the channel. Until next time, keep watching the skies.